Did you know that marketing your interior design firm via video on your social channels is more than just showing the pretty spaces? That's right, it's about storytelling. And today's guest, Jude Charles, is going to walk us through that. Stay tuned. Hey kids, and welcome to Design by Wingnut Social. I am your host, the grand high poobah of all things here at Wingnut Social, a digital marketing agency for home pros and interior designers, Darla Jethro Powell. And today's guest, Jude Charles of Jude Charles and Company, LLC, has some tremendous tips for us on creating video in a structured storytelling way. Very important. There's a huge differential there for us to attract clients. But ideal clients, clients we really want to work with who aren't, you know what I say? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm putting down? So that is our topic for today. But before I have my interview with Jude Charles, of course, Instagram for interior designers. Our online course is live and large, and it's doing really well. Terrific reviews coming in so far. I have had, this is a caveat maybe for me to look at. I've had students who have enrolled in Instagram for interior designers say, Darla, you may have put yourself out of business by offering this online course. Not a thing, really. I love to give, and we have done so with the Instagram for interior designers course. It walks you through the exact same practices and methodologies and strategies that we use here for our Wingnut interior design and architect clients that we use to get them results on their social media. The main difference is that they're paying us to do it for them. There's some other differences there as well, of course, but it's an incredibly robust course. Of course, and terrifically received. And you can find out more information on that at wingnutsocial.com, or you can go to wingnutacademy.com. Just check the drop down there. It's our very first course and the only course that exists right now. Instagram for interior designers. It's an incredibly value-packed course, and it's priced at $12.97. And no, that's not $12.97. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have listened to any of the guests from the show that are either Wingnut clients or interior designers who time and time again are telling me that they're getting clients repeatedly from Instagram, it's because they're doing something right, or we're doing it for them. $1,297. Think about that. If you signed one client within a year of getting this course, what's the average design fee for your firm? $10,000, $15,000, $20,000? Folks, it's seriously a no-brainer. Wingnutsocial.com, Wingnut Academy, and if you do not see increased reach, followers, engagement on your account by implementing the processes and the steps within the course within 90 days, you'll get your money back. Come on, you cannot beat that with a stick. Head on over to wingnutsocial.com or wingnutacademy.com. Both will get you there. All right, so let's get into my conversation with Jude Charles, but of course, here's some more information about him. For over 15 years, Jude Charles has been producing documentaries for entrepreneurs. He has produced stories for Google, Steve Harvey, and dozens of visionary CEOs, including our friend, LuAnn Nigara of A Well-Designed Business. Jude is the author of Dramatic Demonstration. This book is a roadmap that teaches you how to dig deep to find compelling stories that nobody else knows, and then leverage those stories to grow your business. So impactful. Listen, stay tuned to the show and listen, I'm telling you. Jude's mission is to lead and empower entrepreneurs to have relentless, unwavering courage. And boy, we need more of that. Wingnuts, help me in welcoming Jude Charles to the show. Hey there, Jude Charles. Welcome back to the show. It's so nice to see you again.
Darla, it is a pleasure. Thank you for having me back on the show.
Oh, your first episode 257, guys, if you want to go back and listen to Jude's first episode, was so well received. And I got so many compliments on that episode and how amazing you were. So, of course, it was a no-brainer to have you back. And congrats on the terrific documentary that you just did for our good friend, LuAnn Nigara of A Well-Designed Business Podcast, her 7-year anniversary. That was a huge event and launch and quite the undertaking. Congrats on that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was fun filming with LuAnn. We filmed for about 6 months and then edited the documentary. It's a 3-part documentary series following her from the time that she was at High Point to there was a trip she did to Fort Lauderdale, even spending time with her family in New Jersey. And so we just recently launched that. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go to LuAnnNigara.com to watch it. It is It is amazing work. LuAnn made my job easy because she's quite the character. But yeah, it was definitely a fun project.
Yeah, she is. And she's terrific. She's so full of life, and you guys definitely need to go check that out. And then on that topic, that's what this episode is about creating video, of course, because that is your niche and your area of expertise and your wheelhouse. And as an owner of a marketing agency for interior designers, we do recommend in our strategies a lot doing video. Yeah. For your social media marketing, for your website. And we still are getting pushback from interior designers who are the face of the business. So we're going to talk today about how interior designers can utilize video some more. I know we touched on that in your first topic, but we're going to drum it in again. And you have an angle in the green room. We were talking about how interior designers can create 5 stories in their business to attract and close the right client, which is so important, and what that looks like and how to incorporate it in your marketing. So talk to us a little bit about that and we'll get started.
Cool. So where this comes from is that I have spent my life creating this process, this method called dramatic demonstration of proof. And so on the last episode, we talked about the 5 different demonstrations, which are behind the scenes, a live illustration, social proof, transformation, and unique mechanism.
Right.
Now, storytelling is important. I mentioned this on the last podcast. If it is imperative that in 2023, as we're recording this, that you no longer have an option whether or not you tell stories, right? It's imperative. In LuAnn's docuseries, 3-part docuseries, we told a total of 27 stories.
Wow.
Right? So let's rewind. What is a story? A story is about a very specific moment in time. It's a retelling of that very specific moment in time. So when I mentioned that you have 5 different stories you could tell, you think about those 5 categories: behind the scenes, live illustration, social proof, transformation, and unique mechanism. What I'm going to do today, Darla, is I'm going to give you 10 story prompts.
Wow.
To be able to find these stories that I'm talking about. But before I do that, I want to start with a story that I actually told to LuAnn when we first started working together. So in 2014, I went to a leadership conference in Spokane, Washington. And I always knew leadership was important to me. At this time, I'm 25 years old. And I had this crazy idea. Now, I told you Spokane, Washington, but I live in Florida. And I had this crazy idea that I would go from the furthest northwest point of America, which is Washington State, to the furthest southeast point, which is Florida. I would travel by bus.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
It was the craziest idea I ever had. But I was like, you know what? I think it's the only time that I'll ever get to do this. I'm going to do this. So I take this trip. By day 2, I am miserable. I'm in Chicago, Illinois. And I turned back on my phone because I had my phone off this entire time. I turned back on my phone and I get this text message from my sister. And it says, "Call me back. It's urgent."
Uh-oh.
So at this time in 2014, my father had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. My mom was diagnosed with depression. And so she had attempted suicide before.
Oh, no.
And so when my sister texted me that, I knew it was either mom or dad. Unfortunately, I called my sister back, ended up being dad. So I took the first flight back home. I get to the airport in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I hug my brother. I don't say a word. He comes with his daughter, my niece, Ayana. I hug her. I don't say a word. But I sit in the back seat with Ayana because at this point, I am the youngest of 10 children. Never imagined I would lose my father at such an early age, 25 years old. And I'm thinking, okay, what is life going to look like now? As I'm sitting there for about 30 minutes, driving to my father's house, my niece, Ayana, says to me, she looks at me, she says, "Uncle, why did Grandpa have to die?" And I stared at her. Ayana's all of 9 years old at this time. And she says it again. "Why did Grandpa have to die?" As we're making funeral arrangements, deciding what to do with my father's assets, I'll never forget that on August 9th, 2014, the day that we laid my father to rest, I, Jude Charles, the youngest of 10 children, am asked to give his eulogy.
Wow.
And it's in that moment that I had realized leadership wasn't just important. Leadership was who I am and the ability that I have to be able to lead through difficult moments. Now, that's a story I started with when I did my road mapping session with LuAnn, because I wanted her to understand that I wasn't coming here to tell her how to tell stories. I wasn't even coming here to create a really great video about who she was. What I was doing was coming here to lead her through the process of creating and crafting this documentary series. And that is what we did for 6 months. And even beyond that, because there were times when we were going through the editing process where LuAnn would send me a voice note, an audio note, and she would say, Jude, why are we doing this? I don't think I want to do this. This feels like a vanity project. And I had to talk her off the ledge. This literally happened every 2 weeks for a few months straight. And I had to talk her off the ledge. That
sounds like LuAnn. I'm sure it was via Voxer. She's infamous.
Absolutely, it was. It was. But your clients, I may have mentioned this on the last podcast, your clients aren't paying you simply to design something that looks beautiful.
Yeah.
They're paying you to lead them through the process of being able to have something that they're happy with in their home. They're paying you to lead them. That's the most important part if you take nothing else away. And storytelling helps to be able to lead them through that process.
Let's dissect that just a second, Jude. And I'm glad that you mentioned that with LuAnn, and that LuAnn is so humble, right? And for her to say this feels like a vanity project, I see that. And that is a lot of what I see with interior designers as well. They'll come to me and say, Darla, nobody cares. Nobody wants to see this. I don't want to be bold. I'm humble. I want to be behind the scenes. But it's not really about that, is it?
Not at all. It's not about that at all. It's about being able to help bring someone else into your world. So like LuAnn specifically, she's celebrating 7 years of this podcast, this baby that she's built, but she's also celebrating the community. When you watch the documentary series, you're seeing the people that she brings on the show and why she brings them on the show. We're interviewing them and hearing their stories as well. So yeah, when you're creating marketing for yourself, branding for yourself, it's not just about you. It's about the people that you serve. Right. And them getting an opportunity to learn more about you, to understand, do we align? Is this the right person for me? When someone is thinking about working with you, they're asking the question, why should I choose you? And really that boils down to why you. Part of that is being able to put yourself out there, share your story.
And if you're out there and you're introducing yourself or you're showing yourself on video, I personally understand the resistance to that as I don't want to appear vain or like I'm something bigger than I think I am. I do understand that humility part of it and the pushback for that. But like to your point, it isn't really about you as much as it is about how you can help the potential client who's watching you on the video, making them feel more comfortable. If they're aligned with you and your services and how you can help them, they're really the hero of that story. So pushing back on that, while I get it, you're leaving a lot on the table, a lot in all kinds of different ways, money and clients and helping people. That satisfaction that you get when we went into this business or these businesses to start with to help people to make their lives better, you're leaving a part of that puzzle out in that equation that you have there that for your services to help these people. So you have to think about that too. And another thing as well, and correct me, let me know what you've seen. Correct me if I'm wrong, but people really do care. They want to see what you're about and the day life and the behind the scenes of the designer. If they're fans of yours or if they appreciate your work, people are fascinated with behind the scenes interior design. And as designers or decorators, we take the simplest stuff, the most fascinating stuff for granted. We're like, nobody wants to see that. Nobody really cares about that. I'm tremendously guilty of this, but they do. And they want to see it again and again and in lots of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that what you're finding? Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm finding. So I've been in business 17 years at this point. The first 5 years, though, I failed. And I failed because I wasn't doing the exact thing that I talk about now, which is being able to tell stories. In episode 257 with you, I told you about Mrs. Donnelly, who gave me my first set of business cards.
That's right. I remember.
I wouldn't tell that story in the beginning.
Wow.
But when I realized the very first time I told that story, the client started asking more questions like, wait, what? She gave you business cards? Tell me more about that, right? People are interested to get to know who you are. They don't just want the service. They want to know who you are. Are you someone that they will know, like, and trust? And so that's why, you're leaving money on the table, but you're leaving a relationship on the table.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
That could be so much this whole process could be easier of working with the client if there's a genuine relationship there. And so, yeah, you're definitely leaving a lot on the table there.
All right, Jude. So let's say I'm an interior designer out there. I have my crap together. I pretty much know who my target audience is. Walk us through, you had mentioned that you were going to give us some 10 story prompts. Walk us through how to craft stories that are going to relate to our target audience in order to do all these amazing things we're talking about here.
All right. So awesome. We have 10 story prompts. I break this down into 3 different stages. Okay. So the first stage is during the first initial meeting. You're getting to know the client. They want to learn more about you. The first story prompt is, how did you get started? Right? Or let's just say there isn't a fascinating or unique story about how you got started. How did you know this was the work that you were called to do? Mm-hmm. Right? So I will tell interior designers that I work with, don't just say you want to help people. Everyone wants to help someone. Give me more about why that. Where did that come from, or how did that start for you? So that's the first story prompt. How did you get started? The second one is, what makes you unique or different? Many interior designers will discount what makes them unique or different, or they'll think, oh, what someone else can say that they do that, but no one can do it the way that you do it. Like, there's plenty of people that are out there creating videos, creating documentaries, helping their clients tell stories. But I know I'm unique in the way that I lead and the way that I ask questions. Mm-hmm. And so, again, as you can tell, that story I told just at the beginning of this podcast is the same story I tell in road mapping, which is the strategy session I do with my clients. But it's also the story that I just repeat over and over so someone can understand what is that makes Jude uniquely qualified to work with me. So that's the second question, what makes you unique or different? First question is, how did you get started? That's in stage 1. Sure. First initial meeting. If we look at stage 2, as you're working with your client and you want them to know what's expected of them. So let's just say you have a unique process about how you go about things. And you've had in the past clients who just didn't follow this. So tell me about that. A moment when a client did the wrong thing, they didn't follow your process, and it derailed your project. A big thing that's important to me is vulnerability. So I can't work with a client that's not willing to be vulnerable. Okay. And I end up telling a story about that, about a moment when I worked with a client. We did his big premiere in a theater, and we're getting these testimonials from people who have just watched the documentary, and they're saying, I liked it, but there felt like something was missing. And what was missing was the vulnerability. They couldn't communicate that, but I knew that by working behind the scenes. So that's a moment when a client did the wrong thing and didn't follow your process. Tell me about that, because what the potential client that you're sitting across, or as you're going through the process, what they'll learn is the right way to do things and why it's important to do the right thing. Another question in this stage 2, as you're working with the client, is a client who didn't align with your values. I remember talking to an interior designer who worked with a client who their installer, the interior designer's installer, the client was completely rude to him. Right. And because of that, the interior designer fired the client because that person didn't align with their values. And part of their values was treating team members with respect.
Yeah. Or with kindness.
Right? Mm-hmm. But again, you tell your client this as you're working through the process. It doesn't mean that your client's going to be rude. You don't think they're going to be rude. Mm-hmm. But it gives them the opportunity to align with your values. Right? Okay. So that's the fourth story prompt. A client who didn't align with your values, so you decided not to work with them.
So let me just so I understand here, so I can make sure that we're all on the same page here. So these are story prompts that we're actually doing the storytelling in a video kind of way for our marketing. So, okay, I'm going to ask you the question that I'm sure many in the audience are thinking right now. So number 3 and 4, very valuable. Definitely going to help you get ideal clients. But how do we overcome the negative aspects of, you know what I mean? The messaging there where this is a client who didn't work with us because they did this, or this is a client who was a total and we fired her. How do we keep that from skewing negative while still telling the story and having the potential clients align with, and attracting those ideal clients?
Yeah. So you want to focus on every story has a lesson. It has a point.
Okay.
And you want to focus on the lesson. So you realize I had this moment in my life where I lost my father, right? Sure. And it's very hard. It's a negative thing. It's not something that's a happy moment. But I focused on the lesson, which the lesson was that I understood, I found my purpose in that I know how to lead my clients through difficult moments. What are the difficult moments in working with me? Some moments when I'm asking you questions that you feel uncomfortable answering, right? It's very uncomfortable. Being vulnerable is not easy, but I'm going to help guide you through that. It's not easy, but if you have someone that's walking with you on this path, it makes it easier. So the same way with interior designers, I worked with an interior designer who talked about a client who was like, why do you need to know what chair I sit in the morning, right? Like, these are things that your clients aren't really, they just do it because it happens. It's a routine. But you do, because you're great at what you do, you know, like, you need to ask these questions. That is how you turn it into a positive, is you invite them into understanding what is your process like.
Okay.
And that you know what happens when it doesn't go right. So you give them that contrast. Here's what happened that was bad, but if you do this, this is how it could be good. And so you focus on the positive, you focus on the lesson, and wrap it up.
All right, cool. Yep. All right, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so we're to number 5. Are we still in stage 2?
Stage 3 now. So this, to me, is the most important. It's the most important stage, is after you've completed a project, that you begin to tell stories about the project. Maybe you've taken some before and after pictures. Maybe you've brought in a photographer to take the final pictures of what, the living room looks like, what the kitchen looks like. To me, this is the most important stage because it helps you get more clients like this, right?
Yes.
So think about, this is prompt number 5. Think about the challenge or something unexpected that you had to overcome while doing the project. So, for example, I talked about how LuAnn, I had to talk her off the ledge every other 2 weeks, right? That's a behind-the-scenes story that I now have that I share on podcasts.
Sure.
Or I didn't share that story, but I shared how I work with my clients the week leading up to the premiere, and I showed behind-the-scenes pictures of me working with LuAnn. I also have video of me working with LuAnn, but I just happened to decide on Instagram to share the pictures. Number 6 is, now this one is unique and different, but stick with me. What are your hobbies or interests? Okay. Even if you think it doesn't have anything to do with your business, use that hobby or interest as an analogy to illustrate the point that you're making. So, for example, I talk about burnout when I'm speaking on stage. And I use this Jenga set. And in the Jenga set, I write these words like, so I talk about when you burn out in your career, you have to pull things out. You have to remove things from your life. So I write words like spend less time on social media, or, or, just different things like that. And I take the pieces away. But in Jenga, you put things back on top. I say take it away altogether. And what you realize is when you start to take these things away, the structure still holds. Right. So it illustrates the point. It gets the point across. I worked with an interior designer. We talked about this last time, that talked about construction is like a puzzle. So I literally got the interior designer, him and his team, to put together a 30-piece puzzle, actually, because it was big pieces, but I had them put it together for video to illustrate the point that construction is like a puzzle. Right. And so those are just examples of how you could do that. On a story prompt on, like, what are your hobbies and interests, and how do you tie this back to the business that you're running? I forget, we might be on number 7.
We're on number 7.
Yeah, number 7. So what is the reaction you got when you show the client the room or the house for the first time? If you do a big reveal and you want your clients to not, you prep it up, you want to make sure that they see it for the first time, and you do this special presentation, film that. Show what their faces look like. Again, all of this there's 2 parts to this. You want to be able to have the visuals. Now, the visuals can be pictures or a video, but video, obviously, I recommend. But you don't necessarily have to talk about it in the moment. What you could do is talk about it after, as when you're doing a recap or putting an audio with the video, a voiceover as we're seeing this video unfold. But that moment is special. That moment tells a story, too, when we can see it. So again, that's number 7, is what is the reaction you got or have gotten when you show the client the house for the first time?
I love that so much, because when you're showing a reveal of a beautiful project, the clients or potential clients are putting themselves in the shoes of those clients in the video and the joy and the feeling, and I want to be in that spot. I want to be so happy with my space, where that's definitely making them a part of that story and the reveal. And let's be honest, that's what we fast forward to on HGTV all the time. Just get to the reveal. That's the money shot right there.
Yep. And so, okay, let's move on to number 8.
Yes.
Show me your personality or character. Now, this one's easy for LuAnn because we know LuAnn's a character, and so it was easier to show her personality. But what is different about you? Do you have a favorite cup that you drink in the morning? Do you, is there a favorite music that you like to listen to, maybe on your way to a client? This isn't about the thing you do, but it helps make the thing you do better, right? So, for example, I love to read, so I talk about books sometimes, or like I talked about puzzles or Jenga set. That's part of my personality. It's part of my character. I go really deep. It's in the same way that I work with my clients. It's what helps me go really deep. So I talk about that.
We overlook that a lot as interior designers, but we recommend that for our clients too, for their strategy, because whenever you speak about something like the Jenga or the puzzles, I'm sure there's listeners in the audience like, oh my God, I love Jenga, or I love puzzles, who just felt more of a connection with you when you just mentioned those little things. Or if I mention, I know I have you out there in the audience listening. If I mention I love my Star Wars figures, there's one or two. They're like, oh my God, I'm a nerd too. I love that. I love Star Wars. Let's geek out about Star Wars. Or if I love whiskey or Debbie cakes, those little things that seem innocuous or irrelevant are the tie-in that are really helping you align with those clients who are making you relevant. Or like, she's human. I like those things too. And they feel like they know you. And in some ways they do from that. So super important, number 8.
Number 9 is a twist that I like to put on before and after. So there's before and after, but I want to know, what does life look like after?
Love it.
With LuAnn, by the time we started filming her podcast, it had been 6 years already. 6 years, 5 million downloads. Like, the podcast was already built. But I wanted to see, what did life look like after? At the end of episode 3, which is the final episode, I won't give it away because I do want you to watch it, but she talks about what it was like to build Window Works, which was the window treatment business she and Vinny, her husband, had built for 40 years.
Sure.
Versus building the podcast, and what it means to her to be able to build this podcast, and what it feels like now, like what her life looks like now. To me, when you're designing a home, it's more important, what does life look like after? Yes, it looks beautiful. It's always going to look beautiful. That's expected. That's the easy part. But what does life feel like and look like? I talked about working with a architect designer who, when he went in the initial consultation with the client, this client lived on a beach, but there was high tide that kept happening, and he just wanted to build a deck for his kids to be able to play outside. They can't play outside because there's water that keeps coming in the backyard. What does life look like after for this client now that he has this beautiful deck and beautiful area for his kids to play that's safe and fun? 2 years later, what does that look like? Or not even 2 years, 6 months later, what does that look like for his family to be able to do that? So what does life look like after for your clients, different projects that you worked on, be able to tell those stories? Because again, it's not just about the beautiful design. It's about so much more than that in what you're creating.
Again, so important, because your potential client is looking to put themselves in an improved lifestyle. They want a beautiful space, but they want to feel a certain way about it. They want their life to flow easier or be a certain way because they have the space. So it's not just about the 3-dimensional room and it's beautiful. Like you said, of course it's going to be beautiful. We're interior designers, but it's how their life has improved afterwards. And it's a little harder than it sounds, right? To tell that story, especially on video. That's going to take some thought to think that through and to demonstrate that.
Yeah, it takes thought. It definitely takes thought. I myself haven't even, although I've recorded a bunch with LuAnn, and we talked about this in episode 257, so I won't harp on it, but like, take videos with your clients throughout the process.
Yeah.
Right? And I've done that with LuAnn. I haven't put it together yet because it does take time. Even myself, as someone who talks about this, it takes time. But I will do it because it's important for people to see that. And that leads into number 10, which is your entire process. Can we see it from beginning to end? You've shown me bits and pieces, right? You've shown me a challenge that you faced or different challenges that you faced with the project. You've shown me your personality, but can you show me in a 2 to 3 minute video, maybe even 5-minute video, of how this looks from beginning to end, from the very first moment the client meets you or starts to work with you to the very end, to the big reveal and even what life looks like after. Can you show me all those different steps within the process to be able to help someone else see how they can fall into this process with you, how they can come into this process with you and be guided by your experience and your passion and for the things that you do. Like, people need to be led through the process. I started with that. I will end with that because here's the most important thing that I didn't talk about yet.
I love that. And I love that as a big wrap up as an umbrella to cover all of these points really on what the process looks like. And if someone did all these steps that you mentioned here on video and had a storytelling element that hit all of these points, I can't imagine they wouldn't get tons of clients that were ideal clients. I have a question for you, though. The audience might be thinking too. Obviously, the ideal situation is to hire someone like yourself, who's the professional who can lead us and help guide us through all these steps. But short of that, short of going to Jude Charles and hiring you, is there a way for a beginning designer or a newer designer to accomplish this with simple tools like an iPhone or simple things you can get from Amazon? And
yes, absolutely. Right. So
it's iPhone, doable. It's accessible.
It's accessible. And I want, the whole point of doing this is to help other people understand that this is possible, right? An iPhone, the camera that you have in your pocket right now, as long as you're intentional about documenting each part of the process, you're intentional about showing versus telling, you can do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be documented. I've worked with clients before, actually interior designer, who I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. We didn't have access. It was a private island and we didn't have access to bring cameras. I used my cell phone to get certain bits and pieces that we couldn't get otherwise, right? Because we didn't have the access, but we were able to use it in his video. And you wouldn't be able to tell it was between editing it together, you wouldn't be able to tell it was a cell phone footage because the iPhone is just that good, right? Yeah. And so, yes, definitely, if you have an iPhone, start today. It doesn't have to be the perfect angle, but you do need to get started. And once you get started, you'll have it. And then maybe, yes, you can hire an editor or someone else to put it all together, but you have to get started.
I love it. Jude, is there anything that we forgot to discuss on this right here before we get into the fire round? I have some new questions for you since you're a pro here.
Yeah, no, here's the thing I'll wrap up with. I started this story about leadership and I told you everything that happened with LuAnn's project, and there's more that happened. But here's the biggest piece. I think that in 2022, which is when we filmed this documentary, I had burnt out in 2020, but what lingered from burnout was depression. And so I battled depression all throughout filming LuAnn's project.
Oh.
But when you look at it, because I understand my purpose, I understand my gift, when you look at it, you couldn't tell that this was someone who was struggling with something to be able to put this story together. And even LuAnn herself talks about it. We had an after party and she talks about it in the video where she says, even though there were struggles, Jude was still able to lead his team, because I had a team that also worked with me and Jude was able to lead his team through this process. LuAnn could only see that because I started with a story and being able to frame it up that leadership is important and I'm going to lead you and guide you through this process. That's what makes me unique, right? Your clients need to know what makes you unique because that is the thing that's going to get them to trust you.
Yeah.
It's expected for you to have a beautiful design. It's expected for you to be able to know how to pick out colors or different things like that. But there are the unique personality traits or unique characteristics that you can show in video that will help the client understand why you.
I love it. It's so good, Jude, as usual, right? So now I have to ask you, are you ready for the What Up Wingnut round?
I am ready.
All right. So like I mentioned, I have a couple of new questions. One's an old one I'm bringing back for you. But if you were a superhero, which superhero would you be?
Ooh, I think I would be Batman.
I love it.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. Yes. I would be Batman.
Excellent. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
I would be a bamboo tree. So I love bamboo trees because they when you plant one, it takes 3 years before it comes up from the ground, before it hits soil, above the soil. But once it hits above the soil, I forget the amount of time, but it's a crazy thing, like 10 days for it to go to like 3 feet and then higher than that. I think that's kind of been my career. I was underground for a very long time. And now more people are hearing more about me and discovering me and understanding like the thing that I can do that makes me special. So I would be a bamboo tree.
That's really beautiful, Jude. That was really well done. Well played. All right. Last but not least, please recommend a book that has impacted you either personally or professionally.
So this one, I read so many books that it's hard to choose one. I'll tell you this one. There's a book, and it's going to feel like left field, but I think it's important even for interior designers. There's a book called The 7 Levels of Intimacy. And it goes beyond sexual intimacy, right?
Okay.
And so, but that's helped me understand how to build deeper relationships with my clients and even going deeper and understanding who they are and what they're about, what matters to them. So that's a book I would recommend that's kind of changed my life and how I think about things, The 7 Levels of Intimacy.
Do you know who the author is on that?
The author, so yeah, it's on my desk, Matthew Kelly.
The 7 Levels of Intimacy, or if you want to start another kind of business, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you feel like you're called to start something different, yeah. But yeah, 7 Levels of Intimacy.
Stay tuned for my OnlyFans podcast. Jude Charles, it's been a pleasure again. Of course, you're always welcome to come back on the show.
Yes.
But tell the listeners where they can go to find out more about you, and we will call it a day.
Yeah, so I wanted to make this whole thing easier for you. So if you want to get the 10 storytelling prompts, and everything that I talked about today, as far as like what it looked like even in LuAnn's project, because I kind of break that down as well. Go to judecharles.co/wingnut, and you'll be able to download that from there. It's a document that just allows you to see it step by step and help you to do this for yourself. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see, like I know Darla talks a lot about Instagram and creating content for Instagram. You'll see on my Instagram how I create the same kind of content that I'm talking about. Storytelling in video. It's important. It'll help you take things to the next level and attract the right type of client.
100%. And is your Instagram Jude Charles CO as well?
Instagram is just Jude Charles, my first and last name. Yep.
So the website to get these 10 steps here are judecharles.co/wingnut.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Yep. Jude Charles, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me, Darla.
All right, folks, here you have it. Jude made it super easy for me because I was actually going to go over the 10 steps here and break them down for you. I'm so tempted to just say, head on over to judecharles.co/wingnut to download all those, but which of course you can to have them in front of you. But I want to hit on just a couple of them. Of course, we went through all 10. I'm not going to do all 10 again in the outro, but a couple that he mentioned that I love, especially number 2, which was number 8, and number 6. God, I cannot even read my own writing, but it was the personality and the hobbies, right? And you're thinking, again, I know you're out there thinking, I'm looking at you. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit about my hobbies or my personality. And you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. You're an interesting human being. You're telling a story. You're telling a story that's going to relate to your ideal client. So don't forget that. But again, to have a nice list of this, head on over to judecharles.co/wingnut. Make sure to slash the wingnut there so he can see that being on this podcast was not an absolute waste of his time. And that is it for today's episode. Make sure you tune in next Monday for the mini news sesh. And every Monday we have that. Every Wednesday we have our longer form guest interview. And that is going to wrap up this episode. Remember, until next time, to get out there, get uncomfortable, and be great. Uh-oh, you froze.
Oh, can you see me now?
You froze. There you go. Let's start from number 9 again. I don't know who's... 9. Okay, right. Number 9. All right. Ready?
Number 9. Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, I know you're going to do the clap, so go ahead, do the clap, sorry.
Did you know that marketing your interior design firm on video on your social channels isn't just about posting beautiful pictures, it's about the storytelling? Well, today's guest, Jude... Did you know that marketing your interior design firm on social media via video is more than just posting the beautiful spaces in the rooms? Well, today's guest, Jude Charles. Did you know that marketing your interior design firm via video on your social channels, mess with your glasses, they keep slipping.